So it's going to be mostly case studies which the indigenous communities are practicing in different parts of the state and also our neighboring state, Manipur. So we will be talking about how they are doing it, which made them sustain that system. So when we talk about, we have been hearing a lot on the indigenous, the word indigenous. So what do we understand by the word indigenous? Can I hear from this side, this side? What do we mean by the word indigenous? Or is it a new concept? Is it a new word?
Local.
Local, okay. Yeah, how many of you have heard the word indigenous? Okay. So according to the definition given by the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues, they have stated that 340 million of the world's population is indigenous people. So we have 8.1 billion, out of which approximately around 4.2 people are consisted of indigenous people. And these indigenous people, 70% of them lives in Asia. And if we talk about the geographies, 20% of this land are occupied by the indigenous people, where 70% of the biodiversity region is represented by this 20%. So we can see that the indigenous people are, in a few pockets, not everywhere, in a few pockets, where majority of the culture and also biodiversity is being found there. And when we say about indigenous, how do we know that these people are indigenous? We also talk about the history. How long people have been living in that region? Are they originally from that region? Or are they, migrants who comes and live in that region? So we also see the cultural continuity, historical continuity, whether that particular person, maybe, let's take an example of Nagas. The history of Nagas goes way back. We have been living here, our forefathers have been living here, our great forefathers have been living here. We have that history of living in our land. And these indigenous people are also known by their unique cultural identity. So by unique cultural identity, we mean the language. If we speak about the example, language is also one of the biggest challenges that we have in Nagaland. You go to eastern part of Nagaland, they will have their own language. You come to this side of Peren, they have their own language. If we go to some other Loklak or Shamator or Zemenu, they have their own language. And each community has their own language. Same thing with the people, with the Nagas in Manipur. Even with the Tangkhals, we have more than 250 languages, mother tongue. So that's the diversity that we are talking about. So these indigenous people are known by their diversity, by their language, by their cultural unique identity. Each of these villages have their own unique historical identity, in the sense that we also have our own governance, where it is unique from the rest of the country, where each village has their own village chief governed by the village council. We have our own stories. We also have our own belief system. Christianity comes back only later. It's just 100+ years. Whereas before that, we have our own traditional belief. The indigenous people are also identified by self, by self-identification, recognition that people also have that these people are indigenous. And also, we have talked about the governance system. We have our own rights. We have our own governance system on how to use our land, how to use our forests, how to govern ourselves, our ways of life. We have our own. That's what's make the people unique. And when we say about this, when we talk about these indigenous people, when we talk about these people, who are these people and how do they used to live? What are their systems? How do they, their ways of living, their ways of agriculture, their ways of community cohesion? We find that it is quite unique. But this uniqueness is the connection is slowly been diminishing year by year. And our connection with the forest, our connection with the people, our connection with the nature is slowly getting wider and wider. So let's see one short film. This is called Seed of Connection, which is documented by Northeast Network this year. This speaks about this is a documentary about Zizani. Can someone help? It seems it's playing here, but it's not showing there.
Mais自己好白色啦，那是个非常好。
其实人民的生活，什么问题，我们问题，一个问题，熬成好，问题，突出出来是了的，问题怎么办呢？把我们一点点的我拍了，设计了，设计之后呢，我看我们都到了差不多是这么，我们问题呢，不然就了，那问题不，比如你心里，别个问题，因为问题呢，全部不落去，全还不能拿这块方面，我是看着的，如果是那种白日，每次呢，我来办公那个老师跟我不一样，完了，你来我还有么没有？你来呢，我给老汤把吃多少，我是有么？我们的经历，以后把我们的日代，你们弄他做好，实际上人不拍子，实际上人呢，我多么年多么来，我们人呢，我们多么来买，比较人呢，我老干的人，多他呢多的人有呢，你点什么他做不自然就我多得了，真的是啦。你们一个人比那个呢，我们去跟我朋友说，我出来很卡，我们去我们准备，所以说我们叫我准备了，付给了费了，我们人我跟我说我做我那么老实，跟那付了我些，所以我不老不得好我，付了多少呢？不多了多不了呢，付我给别人们的。تقولوا فدر كيروني فدر غدا متي خاو متي كيري ما
دي واش 我这点呢，这个那个好的呢，太我那个的个我好三个的啦，才吃到我那个人的是大的呢，我给我别别么的安尼我，别给我别给么的，别我生给人家呢，他的属于个人的么嘞。我他的话，这个你我没都搞个啥事儿了，那是很紧，那给来给我么嘞？这个你拍多很多人那个我人家跑给我人呢，说是为了啥的人的，然后这不等那你们的，你这个你，搞的这个是吧？我快呗。我这我儿子好是带，不是我是年头，哎呀，我这是你我那边来啥游戏？我好了，没不得不理了，像我打是做了，现在不是我没个自己现在打点呗，跟到年前了，我做人家这给自己给来做人多年，不是人我都在那后面自己也咯，你我做人吃了一解决没呀？我就看到吃到没了噻咯。我知道很多不是白人也，我不吃菜系很关系，那个地方吃到个来的么啦说了，本来的么人的，我们地方不是我给我你自己也在我，的这周围面也这么的，是着，这我里给，地方呢是不牛火，我自己火的，那个嘞，上面我们收入里头了嘛，是吧？不牛的，给日子你现在了，你给你两个人呢，上面就多了么呢？的你，可你好么的，给人那这个你可你我，给这两还没给你自己，上面我们收来的的，我们地方不是往那多了，可你这个属于肉的老多，这没个呢，我跟他属于不是什么，给你呀属于不上吧，是呢，给说的人那些个，人家我这个是不的人。刚好我们就我还得我说啥的，可是我当那些上面的不看我人家不容易，肯定我光了是现在，这个你得在看那么啥一些，你给人花去带了之后，肯定我上面不能收入嘛，你地方是提来人多了，到地方多人多，把钱那多收出来之后。这个日我都是可是日我到了那我给他发这样过去，那时候我看人家发的那些的那些，我的，我看我是就的就是这样，就说是你们谁吃的啥，我自我搞我们你们去，吃呗，那个多少到人家多啥回来你就过来可是。我给我的开始，我说这次的人搞我那种，这个你我跑别人了，给来些着我，这个你我跑什么事情是？我那个帮吃的多的，那个包了我那你俺们上嘛，把那时候快乐啥了，外游是了的，都是不个说呀，俺们才有，我们天天吃我们才个呢。这不啦，我们来不啦我那才把我那做了么来之后，那才可你么的呀？现在说就是我人不一样，我说干啥的多那些个人那人啊，一不是说那这路里面他不过那个地方你那么那家看白给了但我给不还那人来这不是就是花什么的人的说的话，给你就是。mình là khác rồi về cái lát sau rồi suốt từ mình chỉ mình kêu rồi hết rồi gì với mình chỉ mình chỉ tengo tana suốt từ mình rồi bố sẽ mình chỉ rồi bố áo phải mình cái tổ số rồi thì cái rồi bố suốt từ mình thì kholo mình chỉ tengo cái có mình cái rồi rồi mình cái lên sẽ它托给我是给了我是马啥với thì sao mình chỉ có lấy rồi 그니 그니 내가 코마셔를 그래도 내가 나한테 messo서 돼. 근데 때문에 뭐 이제 왜 뭐또 또래 해야 돼서 가야지 이제 메스 패고네. 어디 그 왜, 근데 때문에 오리지널 뭐래. 지를 좀 메스다.
Let's go, che cosa sia?
所 strengthen. The connection between nature, the connection between nature and our food system, and the connection between food, nature, and human. This is the connection that we need to strengthen today. Since this balance has been broken between the human and the nature, there has been a lot of rising problems that we see. You know, with the climatic impact, with the climate change in place, we have seen a lot of problem in our farming system. So this connection is where we need to strengthen. There has to be we need to understand that, you know, we are not living in silos. Like humans are not alone. Like the animals are, you know, we should not see as an individual component. We should see as a system, one system, where the humans, where the animals, where plants are in coexistence, where there has to be balance within this tree. Once the balance is broken, then we also get the consequences. We can also cite an example. In many of the villages in Nagaland, water scarcity has become a very big problem. Starting from October, November, December, till April, May. Villagers face a lot of water scarcity where they have to wait. You know, they have to fetch from the springs, they have to fetch from far off places where there is no sufficient water for domestic needs, let alone forget about the irrigation needs. So this type of issues, there are many such challenges that we are now facing. This is because of the imbalances. We cut down the forest randomly, and the consequences that we get is that, you know, the places have become hotter. We do not get sufficient water, and the pests and diseases have also increased. So there are lots of consequences. So it's a karma. You do something, and you also get the consequence of your doing. So how we treat nature will also determine how the nature is treating you, is treating the human. So this is the change that we are talking about. Starting from the smallest component, if we talk about the producers. So we talk about, this is from the internet. And we all have studied this one, I'm sure, when we were in high school. You know, the footwear. The footwear where, you know, there's a producer, there's a consumer, there's a tertiary consumer, where it goes to a cycle. So once the cycle is broken in between, then there is imbalance. Let's take an example, just the frogs. If there are no frogs, what about snakes? It's going to affect the snakes. So if there is no, grasshopper or, insects, what about the frogs? They will not have food. And if, affecting this chain, it is going to get disrupted if one system in this chain is being affected because of various reasons. It might be a very small link, but it is equally important. So whenever we do an exercise of the food web, we always ask, which is the most important in our food system? Which one is the least important, or which one is more important in the food system? And people used to say, okay, insects are not important, caterpillars are not important. We don't know what to do with this one, that one. They eat up all the crops. That's what they used to answer. But when we do the connection, interconnection of one element to the other element, we find that there is no element in the system which is not important. Because each element is playing their own part. And once that element doesn't play their own part, there is going to be an imbalance. There's going to be a disruption in the system. And that disruption of system is going to affect us. When we talk about indigenous farming systems, earlier, way back, we never used to have problem. In the sense, we don't have problem of water scarcity. We don't have problem where all the crops are eaten away. We don't have problem of, many issues that we see nowadays. But now, everything is like slowly increasing. And yes, there are also systems where there are also villages where they are practicing good systems. But most of the villages have already lost their indigenous way of, the traditional knowledge that they used to have way back. You would be very surprising, like it was like 2-3 years back in one of the villages in Manipur when we did an exercise on the seeds. The women folk in the village were asked to bring seeds, all the seeds, whatever they can find in the village. And they brought only 20 varieties. So we asked what happened to the rest of the varieties. They say that since they get, plastic ready-made seeds, they are all gonna go for that. With the seeds that they got from various agencies, or with the seeds that is readily available in the market, they are going for that. So they are looking at the easy way out. If we see about, when we see about the farming systems, in Manipur, like eastern part of Ukhrul district practice jute cultivation. I'm sure many of the villages in this part, I'm not very sure this part, but in the eastern part of Nagaland also practices jute cultivation. But all jute cultivation is not sustainable. The way we practice has changed from how we used to practice hundreds of years back. The systems have slowly changed. I find it interesting in this particular village in Manipur, where they used to, they are still doing this farming, this jute system, but slowly the number has also gone down. So how they used to do is that, in this particular village, it is a very collective thing for them. So the village chief with the village council takes the decision. So every year they have different parts of land where every year the council decides which part to do the farming, which part to do the jute cultivation. So after getting into that consensus, they go to that particular place, they clear the jungle, and they burn, and they, the field preparation is done that way. But what I find interesting is that they don't throw away the woods that they cut down. Some part of it is used for domestic fuel consumption. Some part of the branches that is left are used for making the contours. Nothing is wasted. So they also don't, slash down all the forests. They crop it. So they also observe a particular season for cutting down the trees. They also follow particular patterns, the timings, and that comes with that is the indigenous knowledge that they have. So after the village comes into consciousness, they cut down and they harvest for their domestic energy consumption, and the rest they use for planting so that the soil and water is conserved. And it is always about, integration. It is not about segregation, as our earlier speaker has also shared. It is about integration of different things. If you go to the jute land, you will not find only rice in that jute cultivation area. You will find varieties. You will find a lot of vegetables. You will find a lot of crops that is being found in that. This is also economically viable for them because they do not depend only on the rice cultivation, but also on different parts. Since they are also growing vegetables, since they are also growing beans, since they are also going for this, that, they get multiple income sources from multiple, products that they grow in that. So it becomes viable for them. Had they been cultivating only rice in that particular patch of land, they would be getting income only from that rice. And it would not have been viable in case some disasters happened. In case some birds comes and eat away all the rice, all the paddy. It would not have been viable because it was viable because they are integrating 11, 12 components in their farming system. That's what's making it sustainable. It is also about regulation. So this is not about individual farming, this is about collective farming, where they impose rules and regulations of do's and don'ts. where they also take collective decision, where the community is involved in each process. It is not done in silos. That is the good thing that we find in this part. And also, when we talk about terrace wetland paddy cultivation, we can also I always love Zizami. I always love the way how they do the wetland terrace cultivation because it is unique. We don't see what they do in many parts of the states or in other places. How they do it is that, the indigenous people also have many regulations on how to utilize their own resources. So it starts from the water distribution system, where the water is being equally shared, equally shared with the collectives, with all the farmers, where they channelize their water in their own paddy fields, and where they also share the leftover water with the neighboring fields. So when they do this cultivation, when we can see only rice, but if we zoom down and see what is in that paddy area, you will find many different things. It is not only about rice that they are doing. They also integrate fishes. They also integrate snails. They are also selling snails. They are also planting many crops along the edge of the contour. So you can find, if you go to their paddy field, you can find many things. You can find maize, you can find. They keep fish all throughout the year. But one of the things that needs to work on more is also because majority of the people are also focused on subsistence farming. The surplus is not sold. So since the surplus also doesn't go to the market, there is also a lesser income. There is also another side where the community can also look in and see if it is viable. Yeah, if we zoom down and see these are the systems, where there will be rice, where there will be beans, where there will be like tulsi or some other herbs which are grown along the contour of the paddy. This is also another good system, which I find in Eastern Nagaland. This is a picture of a farmer in Patson Oken who is doing a pineapple cultivation. So I see many systems, integrated systems. In his farm, there is a fishery, there is a paddy, there is an orchard, and there are also hedges. Around the hedges, around the boundary, he has planted TVs, which also acts as a fencing for protection. And after that, in the sloping area, he has also planted lemon. He has also planted passion fruit. And after that, he has also, planted pineapples, a lot of pineapples. And in the low-lying area, he has put a fishery pond. And below the fishery pond is the terrace. Integrated system. We think that, those who are involved in farming would not survive. So most of the parents, they want children to get into government service so that, the livelihood is insured. No parents would, if you ask any life about children, everyone would be saying, I would want to be an IAS officer, I want to be a doctor, I want to be an engineer, I want to be this, I want to be that. We hardly heard anyone saying about, I want to become a farmer. No, because our parents also don't want. Why is it that parents don't want their children to become a farmer? Because we think that by being a farmer, we will not be able to sustain ourselves. But this is a good example where a farmer can also be self-sustaining. Because when we also see his income, it comes to 1.5 to 2 lakhs from this farm. And there is no difficulty in marketing because it is pre-engaged. This farm also has a livestock component which is integrated. This person also has a duck. This person also has chickens. This person also has a dog. So everything is integrated there. So we also need to see this kind of systems holistically, where we can integrate whatever we can, depending on the feasibility, depending on the availability of resources that we have. This is also a small initiative which any Northeast Network is also engaged in. We also do land farm school, where we also are trying to bridge the generational gap between the younger people and the older people in terms of sharing indigenous knowledge on farming and food system. Nowadays, you see that many of when I say, it happens even in my family. My youngest sibling, we are many of us, so like the gap is, like the generational gap, we can see it, like, we can see it. So when we ask about the younger two in the family to harvest some crops from the garden, they keep on coming back, which one? How does it look like? That is the gap that we have. In our generation, we all that thing, being involved in that, all that thing. But now as the time gradually goes by, we move to cities, we move to towns. You know, our younger generations, the gap is getting wider and wider. Since the gap is getting wider and wider, there is less connection between the younger people and also and also our food system. And there is less passing of knowledge from older system to the younger generation, older generation to the younger generation. So this is where the gap lies. So we also try to, bridge the gap by doing vocational kind of training, 5 days training, where we also bring young people and also let them learn practically on water conservation, on soil conservation, on farming system, on our food system, and also on by interacting with the community knowledge holders. We also try to bridge the gap. We also have in many places, seed keeping is also done individually. But not all the women are also, not all women has the talent for seed keeping. We also have some very good seed keepers in the community. So to let the system ensure that there is seed safe for any disaster or seed safe for any exchanges, we also do community seed banks. In Nagaland, we also have 4 community seed banks where it is run by women. The community seed banks are run by women. So in this community seed bank, they have collections of seeds, of different varieties of seeds, which is accessible for their village, which is also accessible for villages around that community seed bank, and also to other people who are coming and seeing that. So it is also a place where knowledge exchange, where seed exchanges takes place. So this kind of initiatives, why do we have only 4? We can have it in all the village, so that the seeds will not be lost. And with this kind of community seed bank, we also need to start documenting. We also need to, otherwise, maybe down in the next 50 years, 60 years, maybe we will not know about many things about what stories has been associated with seeds. There are also many stories, the Naga people, we are oral people. We have nothing documented. So our passing of knowledge has always been through oral. From, my grandfather will say it to my father will say it to me, I will be saying it to my, sons, daughters. The sons and daughters will say it to the younger generation. That's how the passing has been going on. But once we miss this, once there is no transfer of knowledge from older to younger, it becomes, the knowledge is lost in between the system. There is also an agroecology, women's agroecology part, which is being done collectively. So these women, they come together. The biggest problem that we have is that women not having any decision-making power when it comes to land. Women do not have access to land. That is also one of the biggest challenges that we have. Because any decision regarding the land, women are sidelined. Since it is a patriarchal society, man takes decisions. So one of the incidents that happened way back is also on taking up some project. There was some scheme associated with some monetary benefits that came in, and the mother, the wife, doesn't want to take up that project since it was monocropping, and we talk a lot about diversity, seeds, and not going for monoculture. But the husband wanted to take up that activity, so the activity was being implemented. So this kind of situation is not new, and it is not happening in only one place. It is happening in many certain places. So when women also wants to practice the indigenous systems that she has in mind on her farm, it also becomes, when women doesn't have access to land, it also becomes challenging to convert that theory into action. That is also one gap that we see. And in this women in agroecology farm, we also see that they have integrated soil and water management system. They have also integrated the planting of diverse crops there. They will also have integrated building of soil. They also have integrated many different aspects. So they are starting this kind of community farm. And also women are more accessible with women are more accessible to different schemes and programs when they do it collectively. That is also one of the reasons why they also comes together as a community to get more access on land. We also have the Millet Sisters Collective, which is in eastern part of Nagaland, mainly Shamador, Melori area. The Millet Sisters have come up because of the crisis that was faced during the COVID. During the COVID, the eastern part of Nagaland was not, we were told that the road was not accessible, and the rations were not coming. So when the food was not sufficient, when the rations were not coming, it came to them as a realization that the community has to be self-sustaining, that the community has to have their own food where it would be self-sufficient. They also felt the need to revive the traditional food, the millet, into their food system. So that was how they started. It was shared that was how they started, reviving the millets. Otherwise, the millet was completely going out. Earlier, 30, 40 years back, there was millet in the food system. But if we see 10 years back, we hardly see millet in our food system. Because it is a traditional food, and also thinking of the food security through reviving of this. The system, the millet, the crop is slowly being revived nowadays. And we also have the traditional ways, where the women, the cotton growers, there are still cotton growers in some villages, where they do cotton spinning, where they also do natural dyes, where they also do it, organically, naturally. So this kind of system, I think it needs more, importance. There has to be a collective effort to document all this knowledge that we have. Every year, there is also a seed exchange which is taking place in some parts of Nagaland, where each community will come with their own seeds and do the exchanges. Because not every community has the same seeds. They have different varieties of seeds. That's how they come and do the exchanges from one community to the other community. We also have a lot of challenges like, I also have shared before, less participation of women in the decision-making body. If it is about climate change, yes, many of the government departments are also integrating women, like even in the educational system also. There is also a compulsion that women should also be a part of the SMDC member. Women should also be part of this board, that board, or this development committee, that development committee. But if we see it in the village council, we find it very less. Yes, villages have started accepting few women to be a part of the decision-making body. But why can't we have equal participation? Where women's voice are also taken, where women will also bring in all their, knowledge, indigenous knowledge that they have, where they can also share. Why can't we create that kind of platform? Why can't women also have equal access to land as men, so that it will be more progressive, so that our biodiversity is also sustained? We also see increasing water scarcity, increasing. So I have worked in Manipur for quite a long time, and we also work on water. So when we did a survey in one of the villages, 10 years back, from that particular watershed, there were 70 plus farmers. Within 10-15 years back, now only 7 people are farming. 7 people are into vertical cultivation because the water has all dried off. So there's a lot of crisis in agriculture because of the climate impact. And the soil is not fertile as it was 10, 20, 30 years back. We also have to start building the soil. And building the soil needs to build by the resources that we have, not taking inputs from other places. We should also have to search out the options, different options, how we can build the soil. Because regeneration is a slow process, and we can't wait for regenerating naturally. So there has to be effort from the farmers, effort from the people to build their own soil. It might be through composting, it might be through vermicompost, it might be through liquid matter, it may be this, that technique, which are green, which doesn't involve use of chemical fertilizers. And we also see that because of heat, it has also impacted women. With this heat, women are farming. It also impacted the health of the women. And now with the increasing temperature, it has also impacted the germination rate of the seeds. This has been seen in many villages. The seeds doesn't germinate on time. The rain doesn't come on time. So they will do plantation this week. And after months, they will have to go back and do the replantation. So it has become more labor intensive. These are the systems that we need to, these are the challenges that we need to think and also come up with a strategy how to mitigate this. There is also influx of high-yielding varieties that is coming in the market, which was not available earlier. 10 years back, we hardly heard about high-yielding varieties or GM seeds in the interior parts. We will not expect finding these seeds in, the deepest corner. But nowadays, wherever you go, you can see the access, how easily it has been made available. And since many of the people are also not aware, and also another part is also the easy accessibility. Many have started using this. The challenges also comes with different agencies. Whenever they call for a program, they distribute high-yielding varieties along with it. Maybe it might be, it's unfortunate to say, I hope this is not recorded. It's unfortunate to say that, in some of the Keyi programs, or maybe some of the agri department programs, in some parts of the states, when programs are being implemented, by the end of the training programs, these seeds are distributed. The villagers doesn't want to take the seeds, but they are compelled to take the seeds. There is also, in one of the Tangkul villages, there is also an incident where my friend received a call saying, what should we do about diammonium? They have given us 2 bags and we don't want to use it. How should we do about this? How do we dispose this? That was the question that was received. So this kind of challenges is also coming in. So why can't we collectively, the departments, the farmers, why can't we collectively promote what is green? It is also sometimes contradictory because everybody, the government departments and the NGOs and the organizations are talking about natural farming, are talking about organic farming. But how far is it practical? Or how far are we practicing that? Preaching about one thing, but the follow-up action is another thing, entirely another thing. If we are talking about natural farming, shall we not talk about indigenous seeds that we have? Shall we not talk about the indigenous, techniques of tackling with the pests and diseases, tackling with the, indigenous practices of building the soil? Shall we not do it naturally instead of associating with some different inputs that's available in the market? And as I said before, it is also, the gap, the widening gap in passing of knowledge from older to younger generation, which needs to be bridged. Since this bridge is very less, the traditional knowledge are also losing the process. And nowadays we have a huge problem, especially in many of our project locations, where we don't find young people. We wanted to conduct some training, we wanted to conduct some workshops, but we don't find young people. Because young people have all migrated to different parts of the cities. There is a wide gap. We are targeting the youths for different programs. And we do not find these youths. The younger people are too young, and the older people are too old. So we don't find the right age group, because all the right age group have moved out somewhere else. So migration has become a very big challenge. And we will need to make our economy self-sustaining to retain these youths. We cannot ask them to stay back and not do anything at home. We have to start maximizing the use of, optimizing the use of the resources that we have. We will also have to make agriculture more, I would say, like, it should be more productive. Not in the sense that we should overutilize and, abuse. We should make it more cost effective so that it also generates income for livelihood. Livelihood and biodiversity conservation is closely interlinked. Without taking care of our livelihood, we cannot really talk about biodiversity conservation or climate change. Because our priority is filling the stomach. We will also have to take care of the people there in order to take care of nature. Will the people think about conserving forests, or will the people think about feeding the family? Or sending the children to school? So when we do this kind of prioritization, it is always the people who comes as the first priority. So we will also have to look into this and make it viable so that we can also protect the environment. We can also do the biodiversity conservation side by side. We also need to build a holistic, community system where it is different parts are integrated, where it is not in silos, where there is circular economy. We need to build. There are many elements in the system which can still be built. We can look into those elements and start identifying. Let's say in a village, in most of the eastern part, if you go, it will be like you see many villages which is self-sustaining. Surprisingly, in places which is nearby, big cities like Kohima, or maybe Zizani, it is like food systems are easily accessible. Market foods easily gets access. So there is not much of community enterprise or individual enterprises going on. But in some parts of Nokwak, if you see, they have their own poultry system. They have their own fishery system. There is also a person who is doing big breeding. They have less dependence on the outside market. That's what they find in a remotest corner. So maybe we would also need to relook at the system and build what is not there. Sustain what is already been there, and also build what is not there. It's still not showing now. Almost there. So that also brings the need for diversification, for holistic system, building holistic system in the community, where the livelihood is also taken care of, where the biodiversity is also taken care of, where the community are also learning, where intergeneration knowledge exchange is also there. So there is a system that we need to start looking into. And in each of the village, maybe we may also start needing to build a more self-sustaining model, where there will be farm, where there will be livestock, where there will be different livelihood activities, integration, diversification. So this kind of circular economy we may need to start looking into if we really want to sustain. If we want to retain our youth, and also if we want to, involve more people into our biodiversity conservation or into our system, we need to start looking at each and every aspect. Maybe we may need to organize more farmers' festivals or outlets where we are producing our own, buying our own, and consuming our own, where we do not have to depend on outside market for all the inputs. Maybe we will also need to see what Peren can produce. Eating and selling of surplus is fine. But sometimes we sell off all the good products, and we do not, the parts which cannot be eaten, we let it for ourselves. That also happens. So maybe we can also need to rethink of our system, what that is there. Maybe we can build a system where it is integrating different parts and not looking at only one system. So maybe the organizations, NGOs working in social sector, or maybe the government working in social sector, or the education, educational institute, may also need to start thinking how to incorporate this in their own system. Caring of nature, caring for people. Even in the classroom, it would have been a great progress to integrate agroecology in the syllabus. Even if it's only 1-2 chapters. Some colleges that I know in Manipur have started integrating on spring conservation, building into syllabus. So maybe even in Nagaland, we are in the biodiversity hotspot. We are in a very rich biodiversity region. And to really conserve this and to take forward, maybe we need more awareness. Maybe everybody needs to get involved in this, starting from the younger generation to the older generation. If this kind of system can be built into the educational system, it would be a great purpose. That way we can also preserve our indigenous knowledge and also pass down. Maybe we will also need to think about the circular economy that we have. Our system is not complete. We have many missing links. We may need to, maybe in these 2 days, we will also, by the end of 2 days, we may also come to a conclusion where to build the link. The next session is the agrobiodiversity mapping exercise. Yeah. So in those exercises, you may also start identifying the resources that you already have, and also the things that you don't have. That can also be a point of intervention, a point for starting enterprise. In many villages, it is very rich in producing oilseeds. But we are buying oil from outside. Why can't we process the oil from here? Why can't some youths, why can't some people, why can't some individual, it may be you, it may be only, it may be others, start this kind of social enterprises? We also have a lot of opportunities. There are also a lot of problems. At the same time, there are also a lot of opportunities where we can work. And most of all, it is also the participation. When we talk about agroecology, when we talk about sustainable farming, we cannot do in silos because we are in the community. It is also a joint responsibility. If one person starts using chemical fertilizers, we also get affected, and the other people also get affected. If some people started spraying, pesticides up in the hill, the water is automatically going to flow down, and the paddy fields, the farms which are beneath, is all going to get affected. So it is not an individual thing that we have to do. It has to do with the collectives. Sustainable farming is all about the collectives. So we have to involve everyone. The older generation, the younger generation, men, women, children, all have to be integrated in this system so that it will work. Otherwise, only one section, if we are targeting only one section of people, it doesn't work. Or most of the time, it is not successful. Because we are working with only one people and we are leaving out the rest. So everybody needs to come on board. Everybody needs to participate in this. Thank you. Maybe before I take down this slide, if there is anything that you want to ask, any questions?